Right.
The first thing is what's the best flavor? You know, annuities come in a lot of different flavors. It's better than Baskin Robbins. You know, 31 flavors would be just enough to compare. But you know, when we look at it, you know, what's a variable annuity? And so
Why don't you talk about a
Okay.
variable annuity for a minute? Let's see who would typically be a good person where a variable annuity would work the best for.
Okay. When I think of a variable annuity candidate, they're typically younger. Time can heal their wounds because they can be invested in the market for a longer period of time.
Right.
And why do I say invested with a variable annuity? Typically, you're using a wrapper, the tax advantage wrapper of a variable annuity, to buy mutual funds. You
Right.
get the tax deferral principles, and by being, you're taking the market risk. You're
Yes.
accepting
The
that.
client accepts the market risk.
Right. The insurance company gives you this tax advantage status. In exchange for that, you're going to accept the market risk. I mean, there are some other benefits, including basically a death benefit of perhaps return of principal less what you've spent out of it.
Right.
Which is the kind of the big piece
Yes.
of a standard.
So the
wrapper.
idea is that with a variable annuity, I'm going to take the investment risk. However, if my investments lose and I die, I get my money back.
That's right. Well,
Okay.
somebody gets your money back.
Somebody gets my money back. Yeah, I can't
You
use
put it in the
now.
box with you, you get your money
Right.
back. But
Right.
otherwise, yes, the return of principal is one of the advantages to a variable annuity.
Right.
So,
What's another advantage to a variable annuity?
well, it's really the consideration of unlimited upside.
Okay.
You know, if the market gains 100
Right.
points with a variable annuity, you have the potential to gain 100 points.
Right.
Now, that's
Right.
not a really realistic principle, but in exchange for that risk reward,
Yeah.
higher risk,
Right,
higher reward.
right. So normally with any amount of risk that we take, we also take a corresponding amount, or any type, I said that the opposite way, but you know, any type of reward or gain we're looking for, we take a corresponding amount of risk, and that fits right along with the variable annuity.
Right. And so when you look at the upside,
Right.
then you look at the downside, it's the potential to lose all your principal.
Right. Now you mentioned mutual funds. How do variable annuities compare in fees to mutual funds?
Well, they're typically that they have that expense ratio.
Right.
So you pay your mortality and expenses in a variable annuity on top of your investment expense. Now,
Yes.
depending on the insurance company and how they have negotiated, you know, you're usually able to buy into those mutual funds perhaps a lower charge than if you just bought them on the street,
Yes.
because you're not having to pay that initial share, an A share upfront charge. So you're getting that
the
lower.
load. You're avoiding the load.
Right. So you're
Right,
avoiding the
right,
expense load right
right,
up front.
right.
Now, you're usually paying perhaps maybe closer to a C load. So there is some expenses
Well,
there.
in my experience with variable annuities, are that variable annuities do have relatively high fees, and they're kind of known for that.
Right.
And so you have to get a pretty good investment return to overcome a fee. Typically, my understanding from Morningstar and some of these others is that the typical mutual fund will have somewhere around a 1.25%, 1.5% fee, and that variable annuity, just a normal commercial grade variable annuity, somewhere between 3%, maybe on the low side, depending on how many riders you have, up to maybe 5%.
Right. I mean, obviously, when you start adding riders in, we're getting
Yes.
into a whole new bag of tricks.
Right,
here.
right.
But yeah, typically your base annuity, and this is the base chassis, you're going to pay at
Yes.
least 1.5 for. There are some that are perhaps a little less, but
Right.
that's just the base.
Before you start adding the
Right.
things that people want.
Yeah, exactly. The
Right.
things that you really
Right.
buy an annuity
Right,
for. So.
right. So if we were to summarize the variable annuity, and maybe I'll take a stab at this. The variable annuity is going to give you unlimited upside, but you're also going to have a corresponding downside or risk. It would typically be better for a younger person that has a lot of years ahead of them. And you'd also have to believe that the market is going to do fairly well, because you do have a considerable amount of fees to overcome. So some folks would look at a variable annuity and say they would rather be in a mutual fund, but in certain situations, a variable annuity could be an advantage for a younger person. Have I been fair, Eric?
I'll give you fair.
Okay.
The variable annuity people may not think we were very fair, but I think that was a fair assessment.